Well, good evening, everybody. We'll give it a couple of minutes here and see. I'm just going to check my phone. I've not done this in quite a long time, so let me just see if this is actually broadcasting. If it is not broadcasting, then we're going to be in trouble. Just give me a couple of minutes. Hope everyone is well. It is another cooler, wet night out there tonight. Okay, we'll just stand by. I think it is trying to connect to my social feeds. Hope everyone is well. And for those that I hope will attend, I hope you find some of the information that I share useful here tonight. We are in election season again. It's hard to believe how fast time goes by. It's been 5 years, obviously, almost 5 years since I served as mayor. So my five gone by, a decade goes by in a flash. So when I was younger, my parents used to say, you'll realize that time goes by very quickly. You don't always believe them when you're younger, and you get a bit older and you start to realize time does go by very, very quickly. All right, just bear with me again. I just want to make sure that it is broadcasting. Here we are. Okay, we are broadcasting on one of my channels. I'll just check the other one very quickly. We are broadcasting there as well. All right. Well, we'll hopefully some folks will join us as we go along. It's said we'd start at 7. It's 7:03, so we'll get going. Thank you very much for those of you that may join. This will be recorded, not only on Facebook Live, but in the software that I'm using here as well. It is recording as well. In terms of the goal for tonight is really just to share some experience. I've, before becoming mayor, I was very engaged in our democracy and all levels of politics, something I cared very deeply about, which led me to the mayor's office. And that never stops. I mean, you can't serve on elected council and not care about these things, but it is also not reserved, in my opinion, for those who serve on elected council. Anyone can and has full right to participate in our democracy. It's something that I see often where, people believe that it is only the elected official that, should have the say. And that's certainly not the case. Okay. So hopefully, again, just let me check again. I just want to make sure that it is actually moving. You're supposed to be able to put some comments in as well. So if somebody wants to make a comment, perhaps just to let me know that you can indeed see the broadcast and you can hear me, because if not, I'll be here chatting with myself, which is not entirely uncommon that I might do that. So let me just double check here. Okay, no, I can hear it. So I will keep going with the assumption that people can actually hear me. So again, the goal tonight is to share some experience. I was invited by Civic Tech. I want to shout out to that group with Human Development Council and Prude. I think it was last week and maybe a week ago yesterday to do this same chat. So I thought, hey, why not share it out on social feeds as well to give folks an opportunity to see some of the information. So again, the goal is simply to share experience. I am observing a lack of understanding. I don't say that in judgment. It's an observation by many people making comments, but also by many candidates. That's not unique to St. John, and it certainly is not unique in the municipal level of government. I mean, that would be something that, we would see at all levels of government. So again, I'm a big believer in educating and encouraging people to engage and participate in our democracy. I think that's critically important. In fact, I'd say, Election New Brunswick and municipalities, I am seeing a number of municipalities that have hosted information sessions for prospective candidates. So congratulations. I think in our region, certainly Quispam, Rossay, St. John, maybe Grand Bay is doing that as well, Fredericton, Moncton. And I think we need to see more of that. And, in my opinion, Election New Brunswick has to play a much bigger role in enhancing the participation, because province-wide in the 2021 election, participation was only 30.35%, less than 31%. And in St. John, in some wards, that was even lower than that, right? So 70% of people are staying home. They're not even participating in our municipal elections when, I would argue that municipal elections are closest to the people, right? So it is really critically important that we work on collectively. Elections New Brunswick really should take the lead, but folks like myself and anyone else has the right to participate, which is what I'm trying to do here tonight. I would ask, just for civility in our conversations tonight, it's hard for me. I'm out of practice to be able to watch what you're commenting on at the same time as deliver the slides. So please just be civil. You don't have to like me or you don't have to like anyone else. But we do need to restore civility in our politics. It shocks me. It was bad when I was mayor. It's gotten worse. And, we're not going to attract, just like in the private sector, we're not going to attract the best candidates if we continue to abuse people in the workplace. And, whether people believe it or not, being an elected official is a job. It's really a part-time job with full-time demands. And I've seen and have experienced it firsthand where people will say, well, you're elected, you have to take it. And I don't know how that makes any sense to anyone, that we would expect our elected officials, to just take abuse, be called anything you can imagine, attacked, bullied. And we're not going to enhance our democracy if that continues to be the way that we behave with each other. So we can express ourselves, though, of course. I'm not saying we can't express ourselves. We can disagree. All of those things are fine, but it's just the way that we do that. I think we have to restore that, in my opinion. I'm not going to be talking about specific candidates tonight. I'm going to just share some information so that, hopefully, again, you find it valuable. That's all. Like, what's my goal? My goal is I care deeply about our democracy at all levels. Full disclosure, I work with MP Wayne Long in his office, so I'm involved in the federal level of politics. I was involved municipally. I've been involved advocating with the provincial government. We work closely with provincial partners. So, do I believe we need better outcomes at all levels of government? Yes, I do. But tonight, I'm not picking winners and losers. I'm going to share with you a perspective that I hope you find very valuable. Debbie McCormick, it is so nice to see your name on the screen. I miss you, Debbie. We need to get out for a coffee or a tea. And Debbie is a great example, an amazing example of an engaged citizen who knows her stuff. She's well educated. She's passionate. Debbie and I used to spend some time together when I was mayor, and boy, she's tough. And I say that with deep admiration for you, Debbie. We need more people like Deborah McCormick who know what they're talking about, who care, who are going to hold their elected officials accountable. And, Debbie's very passionate about things like excuse me, about things like term limits, or I had some, thanks for the prompt, Debbie. There are many things that Election New Brunswick can do to enhance our democracy. Term limits is one of those things that we should debate. Financial disclosures. We need to work on the participation rates because, again, those are so low. So I'm going to share my screen. I put these slides together, honestly, last week. I did them very quickly. I'm not presenting my opinion as perfection. I'm a different person than I was when I was mayor. I hope I'm more mature. I'm a bit calmer. I'm still as passionate. But we learn, as we move along, we learn. These slides are, I think a reflection of legislation and what you could expect of the role. So just bear with me if I can figure out this technology, and I will share my screen. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, great. So I'm assuming you can still see me and you can see the slides. So again, education, engagement, participation, that was the goal of the session last week. And, this is something I asked people to raise their hands actually when, I did the presentation, and that was most people misunderstand. Would you agree that most people misunderstand how City Hall actually works and which level of government is responsible for the support and services we receive? So you can throw a comment in the comment box, so you can raise your virtual hand up. I think that is the case. Most people would agree with that. So over the last month or so, I've been playing around. Oh, the other point I want to make is this slide was generated with AI. I use AI all the time. I think AI is an incredibly powerful tool. The word balance is incredibly important in anything that we debate or we discuss, in my opinion, and including AI. I don't think we yet know. I'm certainly supportive of all levels of government putting balanced legislation in place to try to balance the power of AI and some of the risks that are there with AI. I'm not an expert, but for disclosure, I use AI all the time, and I use it, and I to the best of my knowledge is not the right word, but from a perspective of authentically communicating, I hone that message so it reflects, in my opinion, who I am as an individual. So AI in itself isn't the problem, but we're seeing AI play out in this election, and we'll see it continue to play out in elections. I think where I'm just raising a flag for you to think about is when AI doesn't reflect authentically the individual. That's what scares me, because when you're voting, you should know it's a job interview for a $205 million corporation in the case of the city of St. John. And you should know who you're voting for. Is that the individual's intellect or is it a tool that they're using? And again, I'm not saying don't use tools. I just want you to understand, authentically the individual. So I started to think about, this is not new. While I was mayor, we see it on an ongoing basis. People really struggle to understand which level of government is responsible for what. So in this first slide, and this is not meant to be comprehensive, it was meant to encourage conversation. So, and my perspective is as well that center piece, shared responsibility for the well-being of people, things like safe housing, healthcare, basic supports. Yes, there are specific levels of government. So federally handles matters of national concern and powers. So things like national defense and security, criminal law, citizenship and immigration, money and banking, international trade and foreign affairs, transportation, international transportation, things like air travel, interprovincial pipelines and shipping, taxation, social safety nets, fisheries and oceans, and there's more there. Provincially, they have the authority over matters within New Brunswick, including health, education, justice, and municipalities. So really, municipalities are, I don't mean, how do I say? They're the children of the province is the parent, sets the rules. That's not the greatest analogy. I'll try to think of a better one. So they have authority over healthcare delivery, hospitals, Medicare, public health, education, universities, colleges, K-12 schools, transportation provincially, highways, labor laws, natural resources, and there's some crossover there as well. Justice in terms of provincial courts, municipal affairs, driver's license, housing, homelessness, income assistance, mental health, addictions. So those are things we hear about every day, and we'll probably debate here tonight a little bit when we get into the Q&A section. So then municipally, the closest level of government to the ground, if you will, closest to the people, fire protection, police protection, land use, recreation, road maintenance, waste management, water and sewer, public transit, animal control, that's done through the SPCA. So roads, garbage, recreation, police, fire, those services closest to us. And then each of those other levels of government are responsible for the other elements. So, why this matters is that the decisions that are made impact things like housing, taxes, infrastructure, safety. It's all interwoven. And I don't expect folks to be necessarily experts, but when someone says, I'm going to vote out this council because they haven't solved homelessness. Now, I believe there is a responsibility for all three levels of government to coordinate, to work together, to have plans, to have strategies. But I mean, that is technically a core responsibility of the province. So misunderstanding roles leads to frustration and misinformation, and we see that spilling out on a daily basis. And informed citizens make much better decisions at the ballot box or anywhere else. If we're informed and we're knowledgeable about what it is that we're discussing, we're going to make much better decisions for ourselves. So how council actually works, council is the decision-making body, not an individual. And I see so many promises being made, and I'm going to just assume folks don't know better at this stage, but no single councillor, and I speak about this in a few minutes, can make any decisions on their own. At best, all they can do is bring a motion. So council is the decision-making body. The mayor leads, but does not act alone. In the case of St. John, they actually only vote in the case of a tie. The administration, the CAO, the Chief Administrative Officer, and staff actually run all the operations, and the authority rests with council collectively. There's an old adage. So again, if you think about the city of St. John and its $205 million budget, or the corporation of the city of St. John, you're making a selection of 10 councillors and a mayor to serve on the board of directors or the corporation called Council of the City of St. John. Okay? So the scale of this is actually very, very big. So from a governance perspective, and I know my friend Debbie is a governance guru, and she's so passionate about governance. There's an old saying, you can put your eyes on it, but you got to keep your hands off it, right? Eyes on, hands off. And I think that's important for folks to understand. So municipal government is governance. It's not operation. So then when you look at another one of the slides that I know this is a bit small, I will post these back up again in the comments after our session here tonight. When you think about what is it like for someone to serve on council, I mean, the goal is to govern for the entire community. You represent the ward, but you make decisions in the best interest of the entire community. So the roles and responsibilities, so you represent the entire municipality. You set and review policies, you pass bylaws and budgets, you set the strategic direction overall of the city, you oversee long-term financial health, you hold the administration accountable through the city manager or the chief administrative officer, excuse me. So technically the city council only has one employee, that's a chief administrative officer. And the chief administrative officer looks after all of the other employees in the organization. So bottom line, council governs, it does not operate. So, I mean, I get the sense from some of the candidates that they think they're going to drive around in plow trucks themselves. And I can assure you that is not the case. So the model is that council executes the work, policy priorities, and budget, not manage staff, and it doesn't deliver the services directly. Meetings, so regular council meetings, committee meetings, reading hundreds and hundreds. Probably one of the biggest packages I ever had was about 800 or 900 pages. Now, there's an executive summary at the beginning of each of those issues, but it's comprehensive. And I would spend as mayor, because I wanted to make sure I understood every single issue and line. I would read every line. So, I would spend on very, very long prep days. I could spend 6 or 7 hours on a Sunday afternoon, which is when I did my prep. But I mean, you can do it. You get your kit. You can do your kit anytime up to leading up to Mondays. And you can tell when folks have not read their kit, because typically they're asking questions that are already answered in that kit. So, reading those reports, being ready for council, community engagement, public events, and discussion. So the reality is it's a pretty serious time commitment. And I said earlier in my preamble that, today I find that folks are, I'm going to try to speed up a bit because I don't want to run out of time here. I've got as much time as you have, but I'll get through these slides and then we'll get to the Q&A. So, just in terms of that expectation, again, I mean, it really is it's a part-time role that has, I think, again, full-time expectation. So what to expect, I speak about this a bit later, so I'm not going to go through, each of those other lines, but I will share this document for you. So the mayor leads, facilitates, and represents. That is in the legislation. That's the role of the mayor. They preside over the council meetings. They provide leadership to council. They recommend actions to improve governance and finances, and they speak on behalf of council. So council makes a decision. That is what the mayor speaks to. Okay. So if we use some real-time examples here, leading discussions on housing and homelessness, those are incredibly important issues for the community, advocating for federal, provincial funding, working with Port St. John and other economic partners as well, and representing St. John across Canada. So the leadership actually looks like it. You have to facilitate alignment among councillors. I mean, if councils can't learn how to work as a team, it becomes very, very challenging. They guide discussions, not the outcomes. They ensure respectful, productive meetings, and they address the dysfunction when it occurs. So they preside over the meeting. And if you've ever seen a more spirited council meeting where there are points of order or objections being called, ultimately the mayor gets to decide in their best judgment what that move forward path is, or the mayor rules on that point of order. No unilateral decision-making authority, cannot direct staff independently, must operate through council's decisions and votes only in the case of a tie. That's in St. John. I don't know about, honestly, I don't know Fredericton, Moncton, Granby, Quispan, Rosse. That would be in the procedural bylaw that the mayor only votes in the case of a tie. So the mayor leads the process, not the outcome again. In terms of councillors, so again, governance, decision-making, and representation. So they represent the entire municipality. They bring forward issues impacting the community. They develop and evaluate policy, and they participate in meetings and committees. So they vote on, for real examples, so they could vote on housing developments and zoning. They could approve budgets and tax rates. They decide on infrastructure investments with the capital budgets, and they shape public safety approaches like direction for the fire service and bylaws. And currently, the police commission directs police, but the city would approve the budget envelope. So again, they review detailed staff reports, they balance competing priorities, and they consider long-term impacts, and they vote on every decision before council. So, I appreciate that some people feel that council is not transparent. I'm going to argue it's the most transparent level of government there is. Every single decision of council is made in open session, and the only things that can be debated in closed for legislatively allowed to be debated would be land, legal, and HR. But once that is to a decision, then that has to come out to open session for discussion and debate. So their financial responsibility, they approve the operating and capital budget. They balance service levels with affordability. They evaluate trade-offs in spending, and they ensure long-term sustainability. This is probably the toughest part of the job, and this is my famous mason jar. So when I was mayor, we were in this very difficult situation where we had to cut. We had an operating deficit. Municipal governments, by the way, are not allowed to have a deficit. They have to balance their books. So the basic premise here is I've seen, again, a lot of promises online from folks. And what I'd urge caution is, and I would suggest to you to ask the simple question, how? How, candidate, are you going to do that? Because if you want more money for public works and transportation, what mason jar is it coming from? If you want more money for fire service, what jar or police? If you want more money to pave more roads, where's that money going to come from? So it's a really challenging process of trade-offs and back and forths. But again, I would just ask any candidate how. And I've seen folks making big promises, and it just I'm a fiscal conservative. I believe in managing the budget very, very carefully. And I think the city has done a great job. I'm very proud of the long-term financial plan that we put in place, and I think it's paying good dividends. So in terms of limitations, they cannot direct staff. They cannot fix issues individually. They must act through council's decisions, and they rely on administration for the execution. Okay, so the way that this works again is you work as a team, and that's the critical piece. Council makes decisions collectively. So, if we use housing as a for instance, why do these decisions take time? First of all, it's very complex. The market is very complex. Costs have gone up significantly. To do any housing development today can be pretty risky, but there's zoning, there's funding, there's approvals. You have to balance community input and urgency. You have to involve multiple levels of government often, and council has to approve often a lot of those steps. So I just use housing as why don't we go faster? I think there's been a lot of initiatives over the last number of councils that to make things more streamlined. I think there's been some success there. I don't want to forget to say that I think if you go into this with a mindset of service to the community and building on the success of the last council, I think it's easy to fall into a trap that the last folks didn't do a good job. And I probably did that too. So, I sincerely apologize, for things that I may have said at the time that were hurtful. I think each council should build on the success of the previous. Why are taxes hard to lower? Well, there's fixed costs for police, fire, infrastructure. Many of the costs in the budget are fixed costs. The majority of the costs actually are fixed. There's hundreds of millions of dollars in infrastructure deficit. There's growing service demands. Often we hear people want more. They want better. We see that at all levels of government. And there's trade-offs between services and affordability. So what happens when council's divided? The decisions slow down. Priorities become unclear, impact on senior leadership and staff, and public confidence decreases. So, it can be a dark place when the council really gets divided. And I think people are underestimating how much time and energy and skill it takes to keep council together, like any team, by the way. Any team that is, opinionated and strong-willed, and they're there to serve. It takes a lot of effort to be part of a team. No one is an individual there. So the mayor leads and facilitates council. Councilors debate and vote. Mayor votes only in a tie. Councilors vote on all matters, and authority rests with council collectively. No single person runs St. John Council. Everything is decided together. So the skills that matter at City Hall, in my opinion, judgment under pressure, financial literacy and understanding, trade-offs, critical thinking and ability to assess reports and a lot of information, clear and respectful communication, collaboration with diverse viewpoints, system thinking across complex issues. And this is not a single issue job. It requires balanced decisions. And I see, at the forum that we did last Tuesday, folks were saying things like, and it's fine. I understand. Council they didn't say it exactly this way. Council didn't give me what I wanted, so therefore council didn't listen. I don't agree with that, with that assessment. It's difficult. Trust me when I say, you're going to listen to all sides, you're going to make decisions. Many of them are going to be, challenging, and you're doing that ideally with the best interest of the community in mind. So communication is also critical. So character over campaign promises. So integrity, doing the right thing even when it's unpopular. Humility, recognizing you don't have all the answers. Respect for colleagues, staff, and the public. Accountability for decisions and outcomes. Resilience under criticism. Open-mindedness to new information. And you're not electing a promise. You're electing a decision maker. Strong councils reflect the community. So ideally, their different life experiences lead to better decisions. Lived experiences identifies impact others may miss. A mix of background strengthens debate and outcomes. No one person sees the full picture. representation across age, profession, and lived experience, and better decisions happen when more perspectives are at the table. That's an ideal scenario. So there's no perfect candidate. I'm almost done here. No candidate will agree with you on everything. No one person can fix City Hall. Success depends on how well people work together. The goal is balance, not uniformity. And you're not voting for a hero. You're voting for a team. You know, I know folks can get frustrated. I see comments like we should throw everybody out. And look, at the end of the day, I won't tell you how to vote. I'm going to share my views. I'm going to share my opinion. But our democracy is stronger when you participate. But I hope that some of that sheds some light. So, you know, good governance requires clarity of the role. Strong councils require collaboration. Informed citizens strengthen democracy. So, you know, the education piece is so critical. I mean, it's not going to be a single session or a single event. It's going to be a whole series of purposeful, tactical initiatives to strengthen our democracy and our participation. So, well, I'll take some questions if you have them. I see there's 17 messages. Remember to vote. Advanced polls are May 2nd and May 4th. You can find where you vote on the Election NB website. I think it actually is a where to vote, and you put in your address and it'll tell you where your polling station is, so you can find out more at the Elections New Brunswick site. I did throw out some questions. I'll actually post this PowerPoint because I want to get to some of your questions, but I did throw together a few questions that you might want to ask the candidates, and I will share that in the comments after we're done. Okay, so let me go back here to my main slide. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Well, thank you for that. I went through it fairly quickly. Sorry to go so quick. I just want to be cognizant of your time. I've got lots of time. I've got my, I talked about grab a coffee. I do have my coffee. Let me just have a sip. So good. Thank you. Okay, so let me just scroll back up and I will try to address the questions. If you have any other questions, please put them in the comments. And thanks so much, everybody, for coming out. I have, no idea. It doesn't show me actually how many people are participating, but I love these online, forums. I'm actually going to do some more. I've got some really exciting conversations coming up under the umbrella of civics. I'm super pumped. I'm not going to tell you about a session that I'm filming on Saturday, but I'll be sharing that out as soon as it's ready to go. And I hope to do, several of these over the next week, hopefully even more, a couple of weeks, and share these out. And again, all with the purpose of talking about what matters in the community. If you have some ideas, by the way, throw them in the comments on some sessions that might be helpful to you. But, all things civics, what matters to people, the world we live in today, civility in politics, accountability in politics, lessons from, previous elected officials, what they learned, what they'd like to do differently. I'm excited to share some of this with you. So, okay, thanks. Okay. Yeah, so Brian, thanks for attending, Brian. Brian says, totally agree. I think there's a way for me to actually put this. Yep, perfect. Yep, I can put this on the stream. Brian says, totally agree with you on this point, Don. I really hope we're ready to turn the corner on how we speak with each other politically. Online is the worst spot. In person has been great so far. So thanks, Brian. That's really, I think it's a bit of a bubble, right? I mean, I don't think we would say the things that sometimes we say. And look, I'm guilty. We get passionate and, we get fired up and I hope I haven't said some of the mean things that people have said, but I certainly speak my mind. I have no problem with people doing that. But it's interesting, Brian, that you share that your experience going door to door is quite different than your experience, online. And I think that's quite common, actually, right? We hear a lot about that. So Debbie, I think I mentioned, how passionate you are about term limits required, Local Governance Act, campaign contributions should be disclosed, however, not a requirement. I completely agree with you, Debbie. I think I think that should be done. And then from a fairness perspective, I think we have to look at chatting with someone recently about, what are the barriers to people participating? Obviously, financial is a barrier for people to participate in our democracy today. I think, we should seriously consider a sign bylaw for a bunch of reasons, for financial reasons, but, for visual pollution, I did it. You get caught up in it. You put a bunch of signs up because everybody else is like, I joke, it's like the flu. You put one on a corner that nobody has one, and all of a sudden there's 10 signs there. So maybe there's a way to, equalize that a bit, pick an area in each ward and, maybe everybody gets a sign, or there's some things. So, but it's the education piece too, Debbie, that I think is so critically important. And then what are those barriers to people voting and participating? And I think we should be holding, a big event to truly get our hands on that. And there's probably lots of things that have been done in the past, but I really think we have to address those issues, not just talk about it, but actually go and address it. So Kimberly says, why doesn't St. John have any outdoor hockey rinks with boards? That's a great question, Kimberly. I don't know. I mean, somebody with better memory than me here would probably remember some in the past. We have the ball hockey rink down by TD Station. But recreation is something that, I think many people are passionate about. We worked on it in my time. Obviously, we we had a number of financial constraints. But when you think about livability of a community, Kimberly, you live and you work and you play in a community. That's why this, concept of well-being and people's ability to, to do those things in a community, including recreation, is so critically important. So I know the city is trying to catch up. It's interesting. I don't know the answer, the cost benefit of like an outdoor rink. I know I built one once in my backyard. Oh my gosh, I spent more time trying to keep the ice frozen because things, the temperatures fluctuate up and down. In our region, I'm trying to think, I know Sussex has an outdoor rink. Obviously we have the small little skating area down by Market Square, but anyway, it's a good question. I don't really know the answer or even the feasibility of that in this day and age. But thanks for your question. Okay. Perfect. Hi, John. Thanks. So John's just saying, hey, missed the presentation. Look, we have to do so much more of this. Get into conversations where people can come into a safe space and learn together, right? Have disagreement, learn together, push each other. I think that's critically important. So thanks very much, John. Great to hear from you. Sorry, I'm just trying to, every time I scroll to one comment, it goes back to the top of the page. Okay. Yeah. Kimberly. So, and why did we spend $500,000 in an outdoor hockey rink outside TD Station that can't be used in the winter? Yeah. Well, that's a ball hockey rink, Kimberly. I did mention that one. And that was actually, if I remember correctly, that was actually a gift to the city during the Memorial Cup, from the Memorial Cup Society, but thanks. Yeah. So thanks, Debbie. There's a couple things that you said, two things here, Debbie. One is about overlapping responsibilities. Your concern, my concern, voices that are not being heard. Trump understood the population that voices were not heard yet. So I think what you're saying, Debbie, is, people have legitimate concerns. Absolutely. We have them in our family. Like, I don't know a family that doesn't have challenges and issues. And what happens, and it's part of that, I think it's part of that, erosion, Debbie, and others of our democracies, when you just lose trust and you feel like, you're not being heard, you're not seeing outcomes. I think, communicating and doing a better job of engaging with people today is so critically important because the pace of communication is so fast. And things like affordability and all of those issues, housing affordability, all of the issues that we're facing today at all levels of government, and what are the responses to those plans? So, I think we know, and I don't want to get into a Trump debate here with anybody, but I think we know how that's turning out. He got elected with a promise to, do a whole bunch of things that he hasn't done. And again, that's a different debate, different forum. So I think what we need is we need the right people around the table who are going to address those concerns, Debbie, and take the time to explain the complexity of those issues, because the stuff that matters most in my experience is incredibly complex, and bring people along in the journey in terms of what we're actually going to do to try to resolve those issues. So strategy, a work plan with a definition of what success looks like, and measured progress towards those outcomes that we're trying to achieve. I think, to me, that's the basic formula, but none of that is simple by any means. But thank you, as always, Debbie. Excuse me. Yeah, absolutely, Amy. Thanks for that comment. Candidates need to understand what governance is. It's not operational. 100%. It really is that oversight, right? So, there's so many examples that we could use that if you want better snow plowing, you've got to go to the snow plowing winter management plan. If you want more recreation, you have to look at, recreation against the recreation plans. If you want to have more housing in certain areas, well, you either go to the zoning plans or you make a change to the particular zoning plan. So, you've nailed it, Amy, in terms of your understanding. And I hope that some folks will watch this tonight and have a little bit better understanding of that. Okay, sorry, I'm just trying to catch up in some of the... Okay, so yeah, thanks, Joe. So good evening, Don. We often struggle with homeless encampments. Sometimes they get out of control with cleanliness. If my home was kept that way, I'm sure the city would address it. Any idea how to... sorry, Joe, let me get the rest of that comment. Sorry, clipped it off. Any idea how to keep the encampments cleaner? Yeah. Yeah, I do, Joe. I'm not trying to be smart aleck. End the encampments. Empathetically, compassionately get people off the streets. There has been so much money invested. All levels of government are working together. I know, and again, I'm not here representing, Wayne tonight or whatever, but, each level of government has a responsibility. And, certainly my personal perspective is I don't want to live in a place where hundreds of people live in the streets. So let's end it. Let's treat it like the emergency that it is. Let's come together. Let's scale up our plan. Let's act with urgency, and let's respond to it like it was a fire. Let's respond to it like it was a flood. Let's turn on our emergency management team and get the resources that we need, and let's solve it. And, in the meantime, these issues are deeply complex. I am not an expert. One of the sessions for sure that I'm going to have, Joe and others, is with experts who are working on the front line. And just let me say, God bless them. God bless every one of them. And to every one of our fellow citizens who are dealing with mental health addictions, drug addictions, they're homeless. My heart bleeds for the challenges that we face. They're deeply complex. I've spent time with frontline workers, social workers, to try to better understand. And I think we just need to do better. And I didn't take that as judgment in any way. I think your question was an excellent one, Joe. I think it's very natural to say, my gosh, can we not clean this up? And I think we need to scale up. And we need to work on this, and we need to provide housing first is a model proven across the world that you cannot get well if you don't have a safe place to live that you can afford. So we have to start there, and there's progress being made. There's a new a tiny home community with about 80 units being under construction now on Westmoreland Road. So there is progress, but I think we just need to scale it up a little bit faster here. Okay, perfect. Thank you for that comment. Hey, thanks very much, Gina. who says this is a stellar initiative. It's just, I mean, I care. I can't. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong comment. Kimberly, that's something about the, so stellar initiative. Thanks. My pleasure. I mean, I'm so passionate about these issues. Whether you're still the mayor or not the mayor, you can't get this passion for the community out of your blood. So anyway, thanks for the comment. Yeah, Debbie, I mean, look, there's so many issues. I mean, didn't necessarily plan on getting issue by issue, but I want to show respect to those, making the comments around these issues. So, I mean, there are so many challenges around, in your example here, Debbie, around advocating for low-income seniors. I mean, it is so challenging, and it just gets difficult, right? And the city's budget is still dominated by, wages, honestly, dominates a big portion of the budget. And, there's been a lot of inflationary pressure. And so I think, let me just rephrase, I think it's always critically important, Debbie, to think about through the lens of low-income individuals, low-income seniors, and we are plagued with intergenerational poverty, child poverty, people living in low income, seniors living in low income. 40% of St. Johners don't make a living wage, which is now like over $24 an hour. So we have big challenges. We didn't need a trade war and Trump, and we didn't need those other storms. We already had a lot of storms to deal with. So back, Kimberly, sorry, wasn't the city of St. John the biggest funder of the Memorial Cup? No, I can't remember. I'd have to look it up. It was a gift that St. John was the biggest funder of. No, yeah, I'd have to look up your issue. Saying it's a ball hockey rink isn't an answer to, sorry, the question just went away on me here, Kimberly. Saying it's a ball hockey rink isn't an answer to the question, why not put a liner on top of the surface to protect the surface from, I don't know, Kimberly. I mean, I guess afterwards you can message me and, tell me more. I mean, I think you're clearly passionate about recreation, not exactly the focus of this tonight. Certainly talk to candidates about recreation. I just urge you to, the number one recreation, because we're working on it, the number one recreation project for the city of St. John for 5 years has been the dual ice surface multiplex on the east side. So right now that is the number one, and you have to have focus. You can't have 50 focuses. You have to have focus. So right now the number one recreation project is for 2 new ice surfaces at the field house. Okay. Yeah. So Kelly says, yeah. And again, a little bit off topic. So I just want to be careful here. Kelly says, building on Joe's question, any idea how to help people within 2 to 3 kilometers of Somerset Acres? It's getting really problematic. So thank you, Kelly. I'm sorry. And again, I think it's part of my answer. I mean, get folks the help they need, mental health, addictions, housing, and, recognize that we have to also hear the concerns of individuals like yourself. I'm assuming, Kelly, maybe you live in that area, and not hear that as you don't support, right? And because that's not how I'm taking anyone's question here tonight. I mean, sometimes it gets pretty mean online, with really vulgar language and stereotype and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I think the council, all levels of government, their job is to listen and to try to find solutions. And when a solution can't be found, say it. I mean, that would be my advice. If a candidate asks me for advice, say what you can do, say what you can't do, and don't make promises you can't keep. And on issues, though, this isn't like a rink, or this isn't another a pothole or asphalt. It's people, it's fellow citizens living and dying on the street. 39 people died last year in St. John, and we've got to scale up. And again, I know there's a lot of critics that say, we haven't done anything. That's not true, but we have to scale up. But I think one of the things that I learned, while I was mayor for sure, and I observe on a daily basis today, is that, we have to have these conversations about trade-offs. And they're really difficult conversations to have, because nobody wants to give anything up. I don't want to give anything. I want to lose weight and eat chocolate cake every night. But it doesn't work that way, right? So, I think we have to have these really difficult conversations about trade-offs on on these issues that we face, because we can't be everything to everybody. It is absolutely impossible. And that takes a collaboration, and it takes focus. It takes the right people at the table, and it takes people courageous. It takes a lot of courage to to speak up about these issues and to take a position and say out loud the things that other people necessarily haven't wanted to say, and to have it not be turned into, well, you're being disrespectful, or you hate us, or you don't support us. I support, but we can't spend the same dollar 5 times, right? So thanks, Kelly, and I'm not. I mean, they're difficult. I think we've got to get the right small group of people in a room to develop a plan with a mindset of, we are going to solve this, and we're going to do it with urgency. That's my view. Yeah, so I think, Kelly, you're maybe commenting on some of the other comments. Seniors are often overlooked. Yeah, I mean, we want to be representing everybody in the community. And, I know, growth is, well, let me just go back for a second and just qualify here. So let me take a quick sip. So in terms of budget, those mason jars that I showed you a while back, there's only a couple of ways. I mean, the majority, about 80% from memory, of the city's budget comes from property tax. Okay. There's a small amount of revenue, maybe $20 million out of $205 million, but the majority of it comes from property tax. Well, how do you get property tax money? You get it either by building stuff, or by tax assessment growth. Okay. Now, obviously, we've seen a lot. My council was plagued with very low assessment growth. And then, COVID happened, and so many people moved to the province, and assessments went up significantly. This council dropped the tax rate by about 26 cents, appreciating that it still put a lot of pressure on people from an affordability perspective. But the only way you grow your revenue, largely, is by building more stuff, or by the tax assessment going up. Okay. So I need you to keep that in mind as we have these debates on all of these issues, because, I mean, we need growth to deal with inflationary pressure. Now, you're always working on making the organization better, all levels of government should be doing that. But we need growth to keep up with inflation, and to keep up with service demands, and to build new recreation, and to keep up with capital demands, because some of the capital now comes from the operating budget. When I first became mayor, there was no reserves. Now there are reserves, right? So I just want to make that connection to growth. And that means that we get caught all the time in these debates, right? About, like, we need more affordability, we need more affordable units, more affordable housing. Part of the solution for that, now the most deeply affordable units today require subsidization, but market housing also helps, because if there's more supply than demand, then the prices will soften a little bit, right? So anyway, excuse my growth tangent, but I just wanted to speak about that. It's critically important. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So, we're we're getting a bit off topic in terms of what I intended tonight, but anyway, I just want to do my best to try to answer some of the questions. So, any reason you didn't support Councillor Strobrid's motion to study regional amalgamation in Greater St. John? If it was up to you, would you support amalgamation? Yeah, I'm not going to get into the amalgamation debate. At the time, I think, Kimberly, look, at the time, I'm trying to remember, I think we were working through the 3-part plan with the then Higgs government, and I think, regional cooperation, which, there is regional cooperation today. I don't think there's much appetite for for amalgamation. So, however, do I believe that in a province of 800,000 people, we need to be looking at, and there were a number of amalgamations, right, over the last number of years. There were a number of municipalities, that were amalgamated together, and but we need to build on regional cooperation, I guess, is what I would urge. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So John, thanks, John. Speaking of growth, I'm interested in hearing your comments, insights about the city's attracting and retaining newcomers and new talent. Well, it's vital. I mean, it is so important. And, we are in a time of polarization, right? We're really polarized politically. I blame Trump for some of that, and that spills over our borders. People are anxious. Social media algorithms feed us, more and more of biased information, which I also fall victim to. And sorry for the preamble, John, to your question, but I just want to provide some context. We didn't grow for decades in St. John. We didn't grow really very much in New Brunswick for decades. And then we grew, and we grew fast. A lot of that was interprovincial. Some of that was international immigration. If we don't grow, we're in real trouble. And experts like Don Mills and David Campbell and others are speaking about that issue, that if we're not growing in the St. John region by 2 to 3% per year, we're going to fall victim to a receding or a shrinking economy. But we've got to deal with also the challenges related to the weaponization of immigration, blaming immigrants for everything. And it's wrong. We shouldn't be doing it. It makes newcomers less safe. I'm an immigrant. Raise your hand if you're an immigrant. Most people are immigrants, right? Yes, we have to get it right. Yes, we have to be strategic. Yes, we have to have a proper plan, a balanced plan, which I think, government is trying to work on, but we have to get that formula right. So John, it's critical that we attract, that we retain, that we work on the gaps. And we have to understand how come so many young people are underemployed. We have to understand where the skills gaps are. We have to understand how many people are going to retire by skill sets or by trades over the next number of years. And we have to work really, really hard on these issues. And we have to be smart and strategic, because we either have the people we need to keep our economy growing, or we don't, and we shrink. And I don't, if we shrink, all the other stuff we're talking about in terms of our agenda and growth and so on, we're going to be in trouble, right? Okay, I think I got through all the questions. Thank you very much for attending. So it's 7:59. I feel like we got a lot packed in for 57 or 58 minutes. I want to thank you. If you have any questions, this will go up onto my feed. Just put your questions there and I'll do my best to answer those, and watch those over the next day or two. And stay tuned. I'm going to do more of these. You see up in the corner, I'm a big fan of long form conversation, and I've really missed spending time chatting about really important issues that I care about. That's going to be people and social equity and politics and civics, but it's also going to be other topics. And so I'm going to see if I can, with my ADHD brain, I'm going to see if I can get rolling here a bit. And a bit of a theme of curiosity and context, because I'm a curious person, and I think context is critical. Often we're seeing, we're debating with each other, and we're fighting with each other, and there's so much spin, and I find it so hard now. I'm sitting back and saying, is that true? And then, 2 hours later, I'm down the rabbit hole trying to figure out, if the issue that I've looked at is actually true or not. And I find it very difficult. So I can't imagine how most people probably feel the same. So, the theme of curiosity and context, I'm not ready to quite call it a podcast yet. The next 3 or 4 weeks is going to focus on civics and politics and governance, and who knows what comes after that. But I want to thank you. thanks very much for being here with me tonight. I wish you a blessed night, and let's be kind to one another. Let's be civil, and let's speak up for the things that matter, because it does matter. And we all have a voice. We can use it, and we can use it for positive change in our community, in our province, and in our nation. And having been an elected official, I want to say thank you to all those that have served. Some are not reoffering, all those that have put their names up, and all those that have found the courage to, for the first time, put their names up, because it is a tough gig. And I thank you for doing that. It takes courage, and I wish you all the best in this election. So that's episode 1 for tonight. Take care, folks.